once in a while I encounter this stigma against reading in video games. This ontological idea that if text isn't accompanied by voice acting, that it is somehow lesser. I think this concept sucks. Even if you do feel this way, I wanted to share a couple visual novel games that are so good that you should push past this hurdle to play them. And if you already like visual novels, what are you waiting for? Check out these two excellent games. First up, Endless Monday Dreams and Deadlines and Overtime by H.C. Nunn. Dreams and Deadlines and Overtime is an absolute joy. It is also, in essence, two distinct video games. Dreams and Deadlines released in 2023 and is about the struggle of putting off all your work until the very last minute. Overtime released in 2025 and is about, whoops, did it again, but this time maybe coming to the conclusion that this corporate prison is draining your soul of all joy and meaning. Both chapters delve into the very real topics of burnout and evil corporate soullessness and unfulfilled dreams, but it does so with this effervescent wit and charm that I find intoxicating. Every character is so well characterized, their thoughts and motivations all cohering to how they've been written, only their quirks and oddities have been turned up by just a smidge. Penny, the protagonist, is an artist with a gig she hates, so she puts off anything important to instead draw her OC Tiger-chan or play mobile games, which can describe a lot of people, regardless of skill set and profession. But the game turns up this caricature by having Penny visit Tiger-chan's private island, then having Tiger-chan visit Penny's office, and also there's an alien. But throughout all her wacky, potentially imagined adventures, Penny's core character remains true. Sky is an overworked software developer who quits in an attempt to build a career from YouTube, and when that doesn't go so well, she starts building game prototypes. It says here in the script, looks directly in camera. Immense relatability aside, Sky's narrative arc is also grounded in an all-too true reality. Her caricature is then exaggerated by her obsession over air fryers, making it the sole focus of her channel, or the fact the main reason the channel is failing is due to her formal evil boss having built an LLM stand-in to explicitly copy her shtick and cluttering the market with automatically generated air fryer slop. Even said evil boss, Blythe, is still depicted in a somewhat realistic lens. Swap out the evil robot for LLM technologies repackaged as generative AI, and she's basically the same as every single major corporate CEO in the world right now. Threatening aura and menacing knife included. In fact, since she didn't go to that island, she's technically a better person than most other high-level executives. The humorous exaggerations in Endless Monday are used to highlight the absurdities of the capitalistic hellscape we found ourselves in, to make their critiques more poignant. Alright, I cannot go another word without complimenting H.C. Nunn's art. Each character is so well designed and fantastically illustrated. Every portrait perfectly encapsulates each person. Two minor touches that I think are emblematic of this are Sky's burger stain and Penny's lumberlass expressions. The stain represents Sky's almost haphazard way of going through life, and Penny's slow descent into sleep-deprived depravity as she plays this dumb game for hours on end is, once again, deeply relatable. Continuing with art, each of the environments is also well done, albeit well done for a banal office building. Also, I really love Penny's art pieces. The first chapter's faux corporate art nails the soulless aesthetic we're all too familiar with, and the second chapter's portraits are actually just really good. Even the gray rectangle one. Endless Mondays, Dreams and Deadlines and Overtime really spoke to me. Its critique of the mundanity of corporate torture sung. Its demonization of heartless, world-destroying, and straight-up uninteresting LLM technology expressed my own feelings on the topic effortlessly. It is a beautiful game with an incredibly grooving soundtrack, and I love that Penny is hopelessly in love with her boss and mentor Whiskey. I hope she goes for it in the next game. Speaking of the sequel, Endless Mondays in Progress is set to release in 2026, and upon announcement, instantly became one of my most anticipated games of the year. And you should go play the first one now. Get prepared for the next, hopefully great game with this currently great game. And as always, work is da poop. And next, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector by Jump Over the Age. Citizen Sleeper 2 is an interesting sequel. On one hand, it is a standalone title, no knowledge of the previous game is required to enjoy this narrative adventure. On the other hand, it takes place a few years after the first, the world state has been meaningfully altered post the first game's events, and many returning characters make appearances. Much of this returning narrative is by way of backstory. The two mega-corporations that existed in the first are now at war in the second, but it's also character-based. The amount of times the game introduced a character gave them enough personality to work, then alluded to the fact that they had a pivotal role in the first game was so many more than I expected. Some have said characters are primary crew members, others receive one-off appearances. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I said, each are given enough up front that prior knowledge isn't prerequisite, and in pretty much every case I wound up needing to look them up to remind myself of their original roles, which is all to say the continued backstory and returning characters added a nice texture when noticed, but the flavor was still rich without. But for new players, it does feel like a weird mix of being both a pseudo-standalone sequel and a pseudo-direct follow-up. Mechanically though, Citizen Sleeper 2 is a very traditional follow-up. The main dice mechanic from the first has returned and has been expanded. The first game features a sleeper, an escaped robotic slave on the run from their former corporate owners, attempting to integrate into a community on the sprawling space station The Eye. The second game features a sleeper and their companion, Seraphin, on the run from a gang leader, hopping from station to station all throughout the celestial region known as the Belt. Each of the stations act as miniature versions of the first game's hub, all containing a series of tasks that can be completed with the sleeper's daily die. To fill each task's clock requires a skill. The better the sleeper is at said skill, the easier it is to fill. The higher the die, the better they do at it. The main twists come with the narrative. In the first, the sleeper needed to eat and heal and find more stabilizer juice that'd keep their body from deteriorating. In the sequel, the sleeper must convince folks to join the crew, manage fuel to hop from station to station, and maintain rations while out on missions, all while not staying in one place for too long lest their former captor catch up with them. Missions wound up being the most interesting update. The sleeper can bring up to 2 crewmates to fly out to a nearby mission site. These are pulse-pounding micro-adventures. Up to 5 rations can be stored at a time, which means each site has a maximum of 5 cycles to be completed. But everybody's dice are randomized, and the companions brought along might not have the right skills to complete the tasks at each site. And most missions are given alert clocks, where if the sleeper's crew messes up enough times, they'll be kicked from and fail the mission immediately. I had so many moments where I crossed my fingers and hoped and prayed that the 3 die, or what amounts to be about a 75% shot, would fill in the final mission clock. So many times where, miraculously, the final die worked in just the nick of time, which were contrasted by the times I attempted the same gamble in similar situations, only to have stress added to the teammate and the alert clock filled by 1. The balance between risking low die, managing the alert clocks and stress meters, while being cognizant of how many cycles are left, was easily the best upgrade to the Citizen Sleeper gameplay. These stressors truly made me feel like I was in the captain's chair, apologizing to Bliss whenever they got a bit too much stress, rolling my eyes at Eugen when his similar gambit didn't pay off, noting that both companions could do Task A, whereas the sleeper could do Task A and B, so I could optimize my die by having myself, or rather the sleeper, focus on B while Bliss works away at A. Each mission had the tension flowing through each and every single one of my pores, which further engrossed me in the narrative. And I'm happy to report that across multiple playthroughs, I only failed a single mission towards the end of my second hard mode playthrough. Compared to the stressors of missions, the panic of managing fuel to go in between stations and mission sites was, well, not much of a panic at all. Roughly halfway through the game, I never wanted for money again, and the crew was able to gain a good amount of fuel and resources at the start of each cycle, relieving that stressor quickly too. Only once was I actually close to running out of chits. That fear dissipated with the completion of the very next mission. But the gameplay of games like Citizen Sleeper and Citizen Sleeper 2 are actually just vectors in which to deliver moving and eloquent narratives. The stresses of constantly running forward and working for pennies is in service of bringing the sleeper closer to those they find along the way. Gareth Damian Martin has once again knocked the writing out of the park. His prose is immaculate. The way he describes simple actions, the way he embodies the workings of these giant megacorporations, the way he reveres community helping one another is top tier. The prose is flowery without being patronizing, effortlessly describing the settings in just enough detail to allow the reader's imagination to explode with color. And the arcs he puts the characters through always feel natural and moving. My only real complaint would be that I find the first game's story better. The constrained nature really helped emphasize how that game's sleeper was finding and building a community. In contrast, the sprawling nature of Starward Vector made the narrative itself feel almost disjointed. At most, companion characters will have major story beats in 3 different hubs. People brought along on missions do speak their minds here and there, which helps them feel a part of the crew at least somewhat, but since their arcs take place across the vastness of space, nobody's stories wind up feeling connected. In the first game, even if character A doesn't actually speak to character B, each arc becomes a brushstroke, further detailing the portrait of the eye, to make it feel alive. In Starward Vector, they're all independent strings of events that the sleeper stumbles upon, and they lose something by not being tied down in the same way. Ultimately, they feel like side stories, excellently written and narratively gripping side stories, but none feel like they're driven by the A-plot. There are episodes occurring between the season's premiere and finale. As for the A-plot, while I did enjoy it, it didn't have the same gravitas as the story from the first. I really enjoyed helping the first sleeper find their place in a bigger community. I was really moved by the first ending I received, the one with the father and the daughter. My heart still swells recalling it. The sequel didn't do this for me. I was close to the characters, but I wasn't close to a community, and I missed that feeling. But by putting the player into the hands of an escaped slave, by making the gameplay choosing who to bring, deciding when to deploy them, and managing how to get there, it did an excellent job of building a narrative of escape, of fighting for freedom. Starward Vector managed to craft an incredibly touching story. While I was not driven to tears this time around, the final mission leading to credits was beautiful. One last risk to finally get the future they deserve. Despite my narrative woes, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector is an absolutely fantastic game that tells a wonderful story, and it plays even better than the first with the massively invigorating strategic layer the missions brought to the formula. It is not strictly necessary to play the first game before the second, but I, personally, would advise doing so. And both sleepers are non-binary, and one of their returning characters now uses they-them pronouns, which are both things I'm really glad to see in media. I recommend both Citizen Sleeper and Citizen Sleeper 2 immensely. Thank you so much for watching. What are some of your favorite visual novels? Or what are your favorite narrative-focused games, at least? I'll use this moment to mention the last few narrative-focused games I've spoken about, links in the description. Plus, in there are my socials where I'm at Mario8th everywhere. Follow me if you'd like, rate and subscribe if you'd also like. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.